Jason here with Mega Crocs. I'm here to actually review two separate interviews done on the Joe Rogan Experience. I'm kind of excited about this because I saw clips and shorts of these done before, but someone actually kind of collected a few sound bites for me to review to. The issue is, it's been so long since I've seen some of these clips that I can't remember what the visual aids, because I know he has that guy named Jamie who Googles everything for him to bring up images. And so I'm going to interview I'm not going to interview them. I'm going to listen to Joe Rogan's interview with two different people. The other one, I think his name's Kelly Slater. I've never actually heard of this guy. He claims to be a friend of Steve Irwin before he passed away. So we're going to see what they have to say. I want to apologize that it's going to be a little bit of a longer video, but I'm going to try my best to be as concise as possible. I'm also going to apologize about their language. I know on the Joe Rogan Experience there's a lot of cussing or swearing. So, if you have headphones in while you're cleaning, or you want to fold your laundry, you want to go on a long drive while listening to this video, that's great. If you have little ears or little people around you, I get it. I got kids too. So I would put headphones on, or just make sure you're listening to this with them not around. But let's go ahead and let's listen to the first soundbite.
Within sight of us here at all times. But this guy said that, the biggest, I said, what's the biggest one you ever seen? Because we've seen 15-foot Crocs like every 20 minutes, every half an hour. We see a 15-foot. Yeah, no, giant freaking Crocs. Really? Yeah, and we're fishing.
Oh my God.
And we were fishing for barramundi.
That's a crazy fish.
Yeah. And so we're fishing for barramundi, and I keep thinking, like, I don't know, when you got one in the line, it's like a shark, will it bite that thing or whatever? And anyways, we start asking the guy, what's the biggest one you ever saw? And he said, Mike, the biggest one I ever saw was about 28 feet.
28
yeah,
feet?
29 feet maybe.
Oh,
and he said
God.
He's only seen it once, and he saw it from about a kilometer away, and they estimated the size. And he said these guys in a helicopter saw it once.
I have done so many animal moves in my life, and I do live animal shows. So when I hear the claim about 28 feet, that sounds like a very big claim. And in the world of science, if you're going to make a claim, you've got to be able to back it up. Or just run the risk of nobody believing you, or letting certain people believe you, but not anybody worth their salt is going to take it serious unless you have proof. 28-foot animal is not impossible, especially when you take the fossil record into account. Do I think saltwater crocodiles get 28 feet? No. Not really. We have fossils of even things related to saltwater crocodiles, and they didn't get quite that big. So, no, I don't believe 28-foot claim, but if you're going to make that claim, and then your guide, or whatever he's called, I don't know what your charter, maybe? I don't know this guy's credentials. Is he a ranger? I have no idea. If he's going to claim 28 feet, but he's spotted it a kilometer away, that is a huge problem. We like to have point of references. So if someone were to call me saying, hey, there's a snake in my garage and it was slithering by my 5-foot rake, I would guesstimate that they would have a more accurate claim versus someone who called me going, I have a 6-foot rattlesnake in my garage, it's coiled up in the corner. Well, what's your point of reference, right? Because if I were to stretch that out. Also, there's a human element that is very emotional, and I'm pretty sure we'll talk about this again later too. But people are not accurate when it comes to measuring animals. Humans really just suck at measuring things. And so 28 feet, I'll give you an example, actually. One of my favorite YouTubers, my kids and I love his channel. Go check out his channel, The Malibu Artists. A lot less hyperbolic, and he's actually published real scientific papers. Hey, if you're watching me, by the way, I appreciate you, because that baby great white thing, even though people don't always agree with it, at least it's another data point. So keep up the good work. Good documenting. He films great whites and leopard sharks and other sharks from the air. He's now dove with them. And he has drones flying overhead, and he will not give a length of that shark at all. Because unless it goes up to a boat and then he can get the beam of the boat. If he can get the measurement of the boat or something, then he has a point of reference, but it has to swim right up next to it. But there's a really cool moment on his channel where they are filming a shark from the air in one of his drones, but they also are having somebody out in the kayak, and they're going to try to get their kayak right next to the shark to put a camera in the water. Well, that drone is guiding that kayak in closer and closer to a shark, and the drone can see it super clearly. But the person in the kayak They were sitting there saying it's right behind you, and he could not see it because water refracts things. It pushes out light. It changes everything. So making an observation even up close is extremely challenging. So, but in this claim, this thing was up on the beach, but from a kilometer away, and even a helicopter guy saw it. Again, even from the air, what is your point of reference? They can look very big because this does not look like a big crocodile, but once you put the neck and the muscle around the neck, and then you add the body, it becomes a huge animal very quickly. And then the human emotions and inaccuracy kicks in because now it's more than just bones. It's got flesh and muscle, which makes it look a lot bigger. So that was a little hyperbolic. Let's go ahead and get ready for the next soundbite right here.
Like, what is the largest confirmed one? Because if that one is 28 feet 4 inches, the thing about that, when they said 28 feet 4 inches, that's like back when people were full of shit.
Yeah, I mean, this guy who told me, this Aussie guy might have been trying to freak me out too. I mean, because
Puerto Rico, look at that one right there.
That thing's 20 feet, and it's not 20 feet across its back or 12 feet. You know?
Yeah, but another 8 foot long is pretty. That's a lot bigger and wider.
Well, when you see like a 5 foot alligator, and then you see a 10 foot, the girth relative to the length changes at that point.
It's like he's talking about the ratio and the size. It's like 1 point.
Right. What does it say? Number one.
Okay. So I actually have to give a little bit of credit. They were a little less hyperbolic this time, and they acknowledge that people are not accurate in their measurements. So that kind of goes back to what I just said on the first soundbite. Yeah, there's going to be some inaccuracies, and maybe your guide was toying with you a little bit because it's not impossible to imagine. People have lied about animal sizes before because of tourism reasons, and when they actually have a large animal, then they overexploit it. Like Lalong, who was a little over 20 feet and over 2,000 pounds, he was captured in the South Philippines. And when they finally had a giant crocodile, they overexploited him and drained his water every day till he died. So, yeah, I like that they acknowledge that people are not accurate. People can be full of cheese for my younger audiences out there. I also really like that Kelly kind of comes in from nowhere and actually says something really, really clever. If you double the length of a crocodilian, you do not double the weight. So if I had to use his reference, a 5 foot alligator, that's going to be 22 to 25, 26-ish pounds, depending on its weight and how healthy it is. If I were to get a 10 foot alligator, I'm going to have not an animal who's 24 or 50-ish pounds or 52 pounds or anything like that. I'm going to have an animal who's a little over 200 pounds. So it's massive growth in there. So I do like that they acknowledge some of the growth changes and stages through the animal's life. So that was actually, a little more admirable. I do like that they acknowledge that people do lie about their sizes because getting us an accurate size read on a wild animal is really hard. So let's go ahead and hit the last soundbite with the Joe Rogan and Kelly Slater interview right here.
Imagine that there's probably bigger ones out there. I know there was a super killer croc that went extinct that far dwarfed those
that were 60 feet or whatever.
Just giant.
Okay. So, what do you guys think? How big was the super croc? And which super croc are they talking about? See, I get it. They're not zoologists. They're not paleontologists. They're not anything that really is worth listening to, credibly at least. And people are allowed to have banter. And props to them for even knowing about that. But when you say super prehistoric croc, and then up to 60 feet, I've got questions for you. And then I'm going to go on a little tirade about a conversation I had with someone on email about the size of some of these prehistoric crocs, because I do have some issues, so this will probably be my longest rant, okay? Because the size is a challenge. If someone were to take a picture of a giant croc, which I'm going to rewind, pause. Oh, I can't find his book right now. There's a book I'll put on screen either here or here. And this young man named Jake Miller wrote a book, What We Get Wrong About Crocodilians. And he talks extensively about the sizes of crocs. He has a YouTube channel that I will put maybe here. I don't know. It depends on how good at editing I am. But it's Gator Jake 456. My daughter found this channel. He even shouted out my daughter's channel, which is Animal Queen's Adventures, so we'll also put that here. But Jake Miller's YouTube channel, Gator Jake 456, he's almost famous for just trying to decipher the sizes of a lot of modern croc species, like, big claims of saltwater crocodiles, big claims of Nile crocodiles. And people will, take pictures of, the Sri Lankan giant or the Port Blair giant at least. And, trying to decipher just from ratios how big that animal is extremely challenging. So when you say prehistoric super croc, maybe 60 feet, let's go into that because I don't agree. Okay. And we're going to talk about why. First off, which super croc are you talking about? In prehistory, all fossil record, it's fragmented. We know we're missing stuff. And based off Paul Sereno's interview with the dinosaur mummy last October, he teased that he has over 60 tons of rock coming in from North Africa, or I think Morocco. And then he just published the new paper about the Spinosaurus mirabilis, which I guess has a couple of questions I have, which I don't think I'm qualified to get into, but I do have some questions. That was a fun paper, but it seemed like things were left out. But anyway, let's go back. Paul Sereno teased that he might have a new big croc. And he's the one who repopularized Sarcosuchus by calling it super croc, and that's why I bring up Dr. Paul Sereno. He discovered Caprosuchus, which I have right here, which is one of my favorite crocs. A beautiful skull, beautiful animal. But when you say super croc, did you mean the Sarcosuchus that Paul Sereno popularized by name, but was really discovered by the French a lot longer before Sereno even got out there? Do we mean Morosuchus, the giant pancake-headed caiman, or do we mean other giant pancake-headed crocs? Do we mean Euthecodon or Euthecodon, depending on how you want to pronounce that really abstract croc that most people have never heard of? Did he mean Gryposuchus, and we're going more gavialoids? Gavaloid? I mean, my brain today. More of that gharial, like snout. Did he mean the 3 different species of Purosaurus, or Purosaurus, or Purosaurus, or Purosaurus, depending on who you are? But the biggest of the Purosaurus that we know of right now is Brasiliensis. That's a super croc. And when I say croc, I don't mean crocodile or crocodilian. I mean crocodilomorph, or different crocodiliforms. But yeah, there's 3 species of Purosaurus. There's 2 species of Sarcosuchus that we know of, at least. Did he mean the 2 or maybe 3 species of Dinosuchus, depending on where you are? Which, everyone, pause right here. Let's take a quick break. You see that thing right below your screen? There's those little tiny thumbs up. You need to hit that really fast. And then if you haven't subscribed, I'm going to need you to do that really fast. And then I'm going to need you to comment on how many different species of Dinosuchus you think there are. Are you on team 2? Or are you on team 3? I'm not going to really take a side on that one. I like to just follow the data. And I will say that the northern population, I would love to see more work to try to find it out of that area of Montana. The Judith River Formation would be really cool to get more specimens out of. But anyway, we'll see where we go from there. So let's decipher. Okay, so I had a guy challenge. He said, I bought your book, and there's a couple of things I have questions about with your size. I love that. That's what science is all about. So let's go over it. When I first got started, people were pushing Purosaurus' size at 43 feet. And now people are pushing it down to 28 to 33 feet, which I don't really have a problem with. You just got to show your work. So I talked to this guy. He says he loves Dinosuchus. He's already my best friend. Dinosuchus is one of my favorites too. Probably my absolute favorite. It just depends on what mood I'm in. Sometimes I'm all Purosaurus. Sometimes I'm Caprosuchus. Sometimes I'm all Dinosuchus. I'm sometimes all in Sarcosuchus. I even have a lot of Dinosuchus and Sarcosuchus fossils. I even have a Caprosuchus tooth. Which is my rarest fossil. So let's talk about how they measure size. We don't always have a complete animal. In fact, as far as I know, we don't have any completed animals. But Sarcosuchus was recently challenged to be really, really short. Some people put it at 28 feet based off of humerus and or femur circumferences. Huge issue with taking arm length width ratios on a semi-aquatic species. Because crocs are not the same as dinosaurs, which means femoral width is not the most accurate way like you possibly could with an elephant or a T-Rex. Because gravity does affect them, right? But they have different adaptations, including muscles that go through their osteoderms that help kind of support that animal across the whole surface area, and they're on 4 legs doing it. And they don't spend that much time. And they do body sliding too. They might kick their little tiny feet and just slide on their tummy if they're living around mud a lot. So can we be accurate? Well, it depends on what the animal evolved for. And the reason why I don't like femoral and humeral circumference is if I were to take a 14-foot American alligator and I took a 14-foot black caiman, they are not just semi-related. They are pretty close. They're not just crocodilians. They are they are members of the same family, Alligatoridae, but the caiman belongs to the subfamily Caimaninae, and the American alligator belongs to the subfamily Alligatorinae. That is really close in terms of evolution and relations. Subfamilied out is not that big of a deal. Being in the same family, you're pretty close-knit. So if I had two members of the Alligatoridae family, the American alligator and the black caiman, both 14 feet, the caiman's going to have smaller arms. Which means if I were to use the bones out of a black caiman to fill in missing chunks of an American alligator, or I try to decipher the length of American alligator using the femoral circumference of a black caiman, I'm going to get wrong estimates. So we cannot do that, and we're doing it on an animal not related to any modern crocodilians today. Sarcosuchus is not even a true crocodilian. It is just right outside the cusp of being a true crocodilian. It's right up there with goniophylids. Like, they're close, but not quite there yet, so we can't really rely on that. And that paper who tried to use femoral circumference and compared it to American alligators, which, okay, that doesn't make sense. They're not related to American alligators. They probably satisfied very different niches, and we already know that ratios change as the animal grows. So what kind of allometric scaling are they trying to use here? I have issues with that. I'm not even going to beat around the bush, so I will almost always discredit that. But that paper did not take other postcranial materials into account, where at least Dr. Serino's original assessment of the animal size did. But is Serino always accurate? No, because when he gave the total body length of Caprosuchus, he shrank that head down and gave it a 20-foot body, which made it look like those little funny-looking guys off of Beetlejuice with the tiny heads. So that animal needed to be shorter. So, but do we always know the ratios? No. So when I say ratio, there's a couple different head ones that we're going to use. The most commonly used is the snout to the back of the head. And we measure from here to here, and we just get this length right here. And so that right there is your kind of your snout to cranial cap measurement. And we really want to know your dorsal cranial length for you nerds, by the way. So if I had a dorsal cranial length right here, depending on the size of the animal determines how much of that total body length the animal takes. So if I had an 8-foot American alligator, that's about a 1-to-6 ratio, if I remember. I'm pulling this out of the top of my head. Jake, don't get mad at me if you're watching this. I can't memorize all the ratios for every species, every size range. So, but let's just say 1-to-6 ratio. Okay, well, let's just rewind, because the guy who emailed me made the assumption that Deinosuchus would have the same ratios as a saltwater crocodile, a large saltwater crocodile. Let's go to that. So the reason why, let's say we have a 12-foot saltwater crocodile. That's going to have about a ratio of a 1-to-6, 1-to-7, if I remember right. Okay, and then as the animal progresses, the head actually gets smaller. As the animal grows throughout its life, the head continuously gets smaller in comparison to the total body length of the animal. So as that crocodile hits, 14 to 16 feet, we are now going about 1 to 7.5 to 1 to 8 ratio. Except for one individual who did have a 1 to 9 ratio and had I think a 16-foot measurement total body length. I can't remember that. Jake, comment below, buddy. Then we get animals who are like 18, 20, 19 feet or whatever, and we're at a 1 to 9 ratio. If we see on a chart, they are progressively getting... This is backwards to me for you guys on the camera. They are progressively getting a smaller head to that total body length. So almost like this gentleman who commented on my thing, he said, assuming the same ratio of a large saltwater crocodile at 1 to 9, why would we think that the same size animal would just stay at 1, sorry, not the same size, a much larger skull just stopped at 1 to 9 when all modern living analogs continuously get smaller head to body length ratios? So, and depending on how your skull is built, for example, Parusaurus is built like this broad-snouted caiman. Hi, buddy. It's built like this broad-snouted caiman right here. Very short, very stout, rounded skull. Well, if I compared this to an Indian gharial, and let's say we knew the total body length of those animals, Well, the Indian gharial is going to have a skull this long, for both of them being 4.5 feet. So one of them has a much more gracile Longirostein skull, whereas the other one's going to be very short, stout Brevestein kind of skull. And does that ratio change based off your head structures? Yeah, well, Deinosuchus is more of a mesostrine kind of crocodilian. So I can kind of see why we want to use another mesostrined croc that gets big. But is it appropriate? Well, no, because as every modern analog shows us, the longer the total body length is, that smaller the total body length, or the total dorsal cranial length is to the actual animal's total body length. So I don't know why the assumption is that it stops at 1 to 9. That is really, really, really weird to assume that it plateaus. Because what if Joe Rogan was right and we wiped out all the big ones? Okay? Well, what if all the modern crocs we had to build ratios off of that we knew a total body length and we knew the dorsal cranial length, and let's say it stopped at 1 to 7. So that was all of our modern reference and all of our modern information was at 1 to 7. Does that mean we would put Deinosuchus at 1 to 7 because that's all we knew? Why are we just assuming it stops? Right? It doesn't. So that's an argument I would have. But as of right now, most paleontologists are trying to shrink down Deinosuchus, Perusauruses, Sarcosuchus. And if they can get good evidence, I like following the evidence. But I'm going to call out the math, that all math is showing that head should be shrinking. So stopping at 1 to 9, you would have to argue why it's stopping at a 1 to 9 ratio. Just because that's the maximum size we have for saltwater crocodiles, which I will say Jake Miller is doing a research project to actually get more dorsal cranial length, the total body length animals, and measuring skulls and ratios just for saltwater crocodiles, maybe Niles. So if you guys have access to a large skull or know of one, please go onto his Instagram. It's Gator Jake. Go onto his YouTube there, Gator Jake 456. He has his Instagram linked on there, and he has his email linked on there, I believe. And if you have access to a skull, contact him so he can get more stuff. It's going to be an academic paper, and we'll see where we go from there. But yeah, as of right now, when it comes to crocs, 60 feet is not in there. Am I guessing, most, if you want my personal guess, I'm going to lean most of them, because there's smaller members of the species, between 25, 28 feet. Some of the larger species, like the Imperator or the Hatcherai, or Rio Grandensis, Brasiliensis. Well, I think Imperator maybe 35, 38 feet if I'm being really nice. If I'm in a more kind of critical mood, maybe 33, 34-ish feet, depending on what I think that total body length is, because they have a very different lifestyle. When I'm thinking Deinosuchus, if I'm thinking Schwimmerei, I have no issues with the 25, 28 foot animal claims. Especially with that lower jaw that Schwimmer has in his lab. Yeah, I can see some of those animals, maybe even up to 30, 34-ish feet if I'm feeling really open-minded. When it comes to Hatcherai or the Rio Grandensis, I have no qualms with pushing that animal 35, 38 feet. And I think with some of the new stuff, because I do know someone who's pulling some stuff out right now in Texas, there might be something being pushing over 40 feet. But that's drastically smaller than 60 feet. And I don't know if I fully believe it yet until I see it. I just know there's rumors kind of coming down the pipeline. Perusauruses, they have such a shortened skull compared to it. That thing's got built like a tank. Man, I don't know, maybe 33, 35-ish feet. And if they can get them up maybe 38 feet, I don't know. I would love to see more materials. Do more work. All you paleontologists working in South America, let's get some more stuff out there for Perusauruses. Let's go ahead. Let's cut this conversation short. Hopefully that answered why I put them in the ranges. And in my book, hopefully I argued good enough that ratios alone just off certain animal body parts are not good enough. We need more post-cranial materials. And when people try to do stuff like the German study that was done in 2025, they did not do anything post-cranial. And they tried to declassify Deinosuchus as an alligatoroid, and they tried to shrink that thing down. So yeah, not looking at post-cranial stuff is an issue for me, at least, because you can't just base things off the skull alone. All right, we're going to go on to the first Bob Gimlin soundbite here, the clip. Now, this one's a much newer interview, so let's see if Joe Rogan kind of changed his tune. about behind believing some of these supersized animals. And let's go ahead. Now, oh, by the way, Bob Gimlin is not his real name. I don't know his real name. He kind of keeps that private and probably smart. But he likes to do a lot of cryptid stuff and storytelling, a lot of Bigfoot stuff. So I'm curious if like his verbiage on what he does or does not, when he draws the line on belief systems, what kind of evidence he likes. It's kind of nice seeing him not scripted and kind of off the cuff in an interview. So let's go ahead and play that soundbite now.
So let's get back to the crocodile. How come you don't believe?
Why would you believe it? Why would a 50-foot crocodile?
Sure. They just keep getting bigger.
They don't, though.
How big do they get?
I don't know crocodiles.
Right. So here's the thing. What we know about crocodiles now are crocodiles after guns. Okay?
Mm.
So guns change everything. So that alligator out there that you saw in our lobby, that's 80 years old.
Yeah.
80 years old, and a gun killed that alligator. So guns get introduced in the 1800s, and then explorers start going through the Congo in the 1800s, and they start shooting crocodiles. They shoot a lot of crocodiles. In fact, a friend of mine actually got hired to go to the Congo. Was it the Congo? Where? Jim Shockey. What part did he go to? I forget.
I just found the guy,
but he went to Africa. He's a hunter, and they hired him to shoot crocodiles because so many people in this village. He went to this village, said it was so heartbreaking. Like, this guy's missing an arm, this person's missing a leg, they have bites taken out of them. And while he was there, a woman got taken out. Like, while he was there, a woman was washing clothes, and a crocodile snatched her and dragged her into the water.
Yeah.
And when the human beings start bringing guns, the whole ecosystem changes. Right? So these 50-foot things that have been apex predators just sunning themselves on the shore, now some guy lines up a shot from the beach, or from a boat rather, and just takes it out. And they're shooting all these different crocodiles. And so doing this over the course of, 50, 60 years, all the big ones are dead.
Yeah.
And it takes fucking forever for a crocodile to become a 50-foot crocodile.
Okay. Well, congratulations, Joe Rogan's got it figured out. We don't need to answer any other questions. Everyone just take notes and take classes from him. Okay, that was me being hyperbolic. Yay, me. No, there's a lot there. So I need to just rewind. Why do we do this? Why do we study animals? Why do we study science? In the end, we have to find a way to better humanity. Right? That's the overall goal. And if that's not your goal, you'll never get funding for your research or education programs. So if you're trying to start an education company or a research, if you can't justify its existence, you're going to have a hard time getting funding. And so I do a lot of animal and human conflicts. Human-wildlife conflicts are very real. So before I address anything else, and that was a long soundbite, I really, really want to just emphasize, it is a big deal to me when we have negative encounters where somebody gets hurt by a wild animal. Here where I live, I do teach my audiences, sometimes even adult classes. Even I teach classrooms for my nonprofit. And a lot of it is when we encounter wildlife, what do you do? Or when you're visiting nature, what is the appropriate behavior? And that's all centered around minimizing negative encounters with wildlife. And it breaks my heart when I hear stories like that village where that woman got taken. Injuries. Crocodiles are real predators, and they can go a long time between meals. I know he mentioned that it's like a buffet for crocs in the river. It's not that easy. Food fights back, and you have other predators in competition, and you don't always know if you're going to be in the right spot at the right time to get to that food. So do crocs sometimes go a long time between meals? Yes. We've even seen some crocs go over a year between feeding. That's a big deal. Now, do they like it? No. They're definitely going to try to feed themselves, but they're not as lucky when it comes to having prey that's exploitable as people think. And now with humans involved, we actually are their main competition. So when you mention the Congo region, there is a huge problem, something called the bushmeat crisis. We have a whole bunch of people within a certain region, and they need to feed their families. And it's probably a big source of poaching. We're losing wildlife very quickly. And when we have like armies and civil wars and moving through the jungle, they're shooting animals and eating them at rates that other predators cannot keep up. And so, yeah, the Congo, we've had a lot of occurrences of humans being taken down the Congo River because we have overfished the river, we have overhunted the forests, so we have minimized the amount of feeding opportunities that the crocodiles of the Congo can actually exploit. So they're actually pretty hungry down there, which can actually increase human-animal conflict. And so I know there are some philanthropists who are trying to get clean water wells dug in different parts of Africa, and I don't know if their goal is to get people away from crocodiles. Maybe it is, but it's also to get people more consistent and fresh, clean water, because water is a pretty big deal, and humans follow water through most of our geography. And if we have a large population through the tropics and subtropics on the equator near fresh water, that is, and sometimes salt water, huge croc territories. So yeah, human-animal conflict is a big deal. Do we only know crocs after guns? No. We have an extensive history. Think about the Egyptians. They mummified crocodiles. They kept them as pets. They are way before guns, and why do we not have a mummified giant 50-foot crocodile? And don't tell me they couldn't move it, because they moved giant sandstone blocks. They were not dumb. So to claim that we only know crocs, we've had crocs perhaps in the Colosseum. We had Romans and Greeks traveling down parts of the Nile. And some of them did have some reports of some pretty big animals, but they didn't have the chance to measure them. They didn't do anything really academic with that. They just said, I saw this thing, maybe it was huge. And that was sometimes their first exposure, which means their mind could have been running wild. So do we only know crocs before guns? No. And during the 1800s to early 1900s, when people started popping off big crocs, that is a true statement, Joe. I give you credit on that one. Did we overhunt the big crocs? Absolutely. Are they getting smaller? In general, yes. Now that they're being protected, are we seeing a rise of larger ones? Yes. I think negating, in the very beginning, I want to note that Joe Rogan kind of presses the gas pedal onto Bob Gimlin. Don't know your name. He presses the gas pedal on him, and then he gets him to say, I don't know crocs. And then he's like, aha, gotcha. I'm going to double down. Why don't you believe in crocs? 50-foot crocs. That was a little bit of a kind of a flex there, that I think if someone who knew crocs was talking, like, no, we have a lot more information than you're giving credit for, and guns were not the only factor that brought them down. Human competition is a big one. We overfish and overhunt too, and not just crocs. But when it comes to these hunters, you bring up a good point. They keep stuff. They keep prizes. They keep trophies. So when you're shooting them off with crocs, the big two trophies, the big three you're going to get are people collecting the skulls. Where are the skulls of these 50-foot animals? I mean, in that interview, you made it sound like they were sitting up on the beach and people just popping them like candy. Where are the skulls? And if you're not getting the skulls, where's the skins? People collect skins. If you're not getting the skins, sometimes people collect the hands. And if you're not doing the hands, here's the fourth one, the teeth. Something off of that animal. Sometimes people will collect just the tips of the tails. Where is this? Because we do have big skulls in museums in France and England and Indonesia and the Philippines. We got skulls from these massive hunts. Australia, we have these remains, but nothing gets remotely close to an animal that could even tease anything over 30 feet, 40 feet. 50 feet is not just a stretch. That is the stretch of the century. You're now claiming that these crocs, Niles and Salties in particular, are getting bigger than Sarcosuchus, Deinosuchus, and Parusaurus. So you would have to justify that claim and show me the evidence before you start throwing, you don't believe 50 feet? How dare you? I think that's a little silly. And I do think it's funny that Bob Gimlin kind of slipped in there. 50 feet, why would you believe that? Coming from a guy who supports people who believe in cryptids, I think it's funny and kind of a slight double standard. Not making fun of you, but it does sound like a double standard when you question someone on their belief systems. I don't disbelieve or believe in any of these cryptids without evidence. And I have not been sold personally on any of the evidence yet. And if you guys think I should do a reaction video to some of the evidence, I'll be down. Probably I'll just stay on the fence because it's kind of ambiguous. But that was a long interaction between the two of them, and I'm glad I got that. But yeah,
stay alive. Like they only die when something happens to them.
But there's one crocodile in a reserve in South Africa who was born in like 1890 or something, and he's only like 17 feet long.
Right.
So you think that's because his environment wasn't big enough?
I think it's because he's born in 1890, not 1790.
Oh.
So they don't die.
Okay.
So if a crocodile's living in the Congo, okay, the Congo is rich with life. There's life everywhere. And certain animals have to cross these rivers. And that's just a fucking meal train.
Yeah.
You know, you've seen those animals, wildebeest trying to make it across the river, and then the crocs show up and just start snatching them. I mean, some of them make it through and some of them die, and that's just how it's always been.
Yeah.
And so they've had enormous amounts of food forever, and if they've lived for hundreds and hundreds of years, those things would just continue to grow. It doesn't seem outside the realm of possibility for something to be twice as big as the biggest one that they've spotted.
Yeah, but that's long. Like great white sharks, we're pretty sure that they get to 22 and a half feet, and then they get fatter.
Right.
So 50 feet is really big.
Megalodons.
Yeah, but that's a different thing.
Right. But it was also a giant fucking shark.
Yes.
I think it's possible that there's certain subspecies of crocodiles.
Yeah.
Just like there is like caimans, like there's different subspecies of caimans or crocodiles rather, even in the Amazon. There's big ones that get to be like 16 feet long, and there's small ones that get killed by jaguars all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Now, those are cool.
I think that Bigfoot is more likely to be real than a 50-foot crocodile.
So you think these people that had these depictions of it being as big or bigger than their boat, they're just exaggerating?
Yeah.
Yeah?
I do. But not in a malicious or even a lying way.
Probably just freaked out by the size of the goddamn thing.
Not even freaked out, just like it was giant.
Right.
Like,
and then they exaggerate over time.
Like, it was probably 20 or 30 feet, maybe. But, like, twice as big, more than twice as big as the biggest ever, is pretty nuts.
It is nuts, but occasionally animals do have mutations that makes them much larger. And you see that with humans. Like, the biggest human ever was, like, 9 feet tall, wasn't he?
But not 12.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, true, right? Not double the size. Right, but he also was dealing with gravity.
Yes.
And, like, the real problems with being
okay. That was a really long soundbite. You know what? There's a couple funny moments I have to just kind of go back onto. First off, again, the funny comment of I believe in a Bigfoot more than a 50-foot crocodile. I don't know. Okay, again, pause what you're doing right now. Down below, there's this little thing that looks like this. Hit that. And then comment on what you think is more likely, a 50-foot crocodile or Bigfoot. Now, I have friends who are very, very much like believers in cryptids, and I do not judge them. And they gave me a very beautiful firsthand account that they have personally experienced. And I love that. And I've even gone out with them to go look for Bigfoot. I think that's great. I'm still personally on the fence. I want more evidence. But I'm not going to make fun of anybody for liking Bigfoot or believing in a Bigfoot. But I hope they don't get mad at me for not believing in it yet without the evidence. I need a bigger mountain of evidence. But again, no judgment as long as you're not judging me. But comment below. Do you believe there's a 50-foot crocodile? I'm also on the fence with that, equally to Bigfoot. But for someone to believe in a cryptid, but to make someone feel disbelieved in their own beliefs, again, kind of brings up a double standard. Next, can we just talk about Joe Rogan moving the goalpost a little bit there? He talks about this long animal, how their longevity, which we'll get into. And, the Bob Gimlin guy beautifully brings in an actual case study, something that is actually measurable of an animal called Henry. And if I remember right, Henry, he was born in the late 1800s, and he was caught in early 1900s, 1903, 1904, something like that. And he is 16.4 feet or 17 feet. So he got it close. And now he lives in a conservation preserve. He was not caught in South Africa. He was actually caught more East Africa, north of South Africa, east. Henry is an old croc, and he was probably born 1880s, 1890s. And he was an adult size. He was big enough to bring down an adult and a human being. So yeah, he wasn't little. And that can take 15, 20 plus years to get that size. So Bob Gimlin appropriately brings up Henry the crocodile, talks about his size, and then he's like, so why isn't he super big? And Joe Rogan says it's because he was born in 1890, not 1790. Talk about moving the goalpost. Because if he was born in 1790, he would have said because he wasn't born in 1690. That is so difficult. So I'm going to talk about croc growth, and I'm going to be as fast as possible. In nature, we have two main strategies for growth when it comes to vertebrates. We have indeterminate growth and determinate growth. Humans are mostly animals who use determinate growth, which means you have a cap on your height that is mostly determined by proteins and binding proteins that go around your DNA and your chromosomes. Your genes mostly determine your growth rate. And there's different ways to manipulate that, such as the binding proteins that go onto your DNA can also alter that sometimes, depending on which part of the gene gets expressed when. But, because yeah, your genes don't get expressed all the time, every time. There's little proteins that wrap them up, and that can determine expression as well. So, determinate growth pretty much means I have a determined size that is my maximum. Indeterminate growth means I grow throughout my life. And do crocs grow throughout their life? Absolutely. But there's a lot of factors involved. And so I'm going to pair it to one of the other claims that Joe Rogan said. They live forever. They don't die unless something happens to them. That is false. They do have a maximum lifespan. They do not grow there for indefinite until something accidentally kills them, because that's counterintuitive. The bigger they get, nothing would be able to kill them eventually, right? And nature would definitely favor that because the big boy crocs do the most breeding, and they can dominate entire other portions of rivers to make sure other male crocs don't breed, which means they'd be spreading lots of genes. Lots of genes for big boys. And so we would be seeing a little bit more of a different genome, phenotypic expression on that. So here's a big misconception. DNA is the only thing that determines growth. No. So I'm going to use Lalong as an example of an animal that was really big, the largest caught alive and measured while alive saltwater crocodile, like 20 feet, 3 inches or something, little over 2,000 pounds. Big animal, okay? He had a full set of teeth. If we're dealing with a really old croc, they tend to lose their teeth. Now, that sounds kind of opposite to what you may have learned on Animal Planet, which is fine. But as crocs age, they stop producing as much teeth as frequently. So, and that can also be affected by nutrition. So if you have an animal in captivity with poor nutrition or didn't get everything it needed as frequently as it needed it by, certain vitamins and minerals, calcium, whatever, you'll see them lose their teeth too. But in the most part, really old crocodiles won't grow their teeth, and they can still capture prey. They can crush down on their skulls and stuff, but it's harder. They're not going to be able to catch fish as easy, right? And even big crocs eat fish. So if you have a croc with really good DNA, with really good food resources, especially in its infancy, with minimized stress in the ecosystem, you can maximize to get a huge animal. But let's say you take that exact same animal with the same genotype, with the same potential phenotypic expressions, and you minimized its nutrition through a stressed ecosystem, you might have an animal who's substantially smaller at the adult sizes. So yeah, it's not just DNA and then growing forever. So if you hear the word crocs grow their entire lives, that can be pretty intimidating, but it's kind of a cool thought, and it's true. They do grow their entire lives. Here's where it kind of differs. Like you and I, if any of you have kids, they grow really fast. When they're first born, they're like doubling in weight pretty quickly. And that's normal. We want to get our babies to a more suitable, self-sustainable size where we don't have to haul them on our hips as often. Now, humans were really weird because we do it way longer than most animals, but we experience most of our aggressive growth rates as babies and toddlers, and then we kind of respike that into our teenage years. Crocodiles are pretty similar. They get their most explosive growth rates as babies, and they're going to grow, 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 grow. But as they age, that gets slower and slower and slower. So if I have a 60 or 70-year-old crocodile, it's millimeters on the year. It's almost unrecognizable. And with them approaching that lifespan, with the stresses of nature, remember, food fights back. You got hippos, you got water buffalo, you got all lions, and if you're in South Asia, tigers and other crocodilians, and sometimes sharks, and even though they like to eat sharks. They have a stress that is just not easy hunky-dory. They have to constantly fight for survival. So no, they're not going to live forever, and they're going to grow to these 50-foot ranges because they live forever. They don't live forever. They do have lifespans. Henry's a beautiful example of a really long-lived croc, and he's, what is it, like 130, maybe 140? I can't remember exactly because we don't have his birth date, right? When Joe Rogan talks about subspecies, do any of you know what he means? I actually kind of got lost on his little tangent there. Was he insinuating that Megalodon is big because it's a subspecies? And where did he... It's an actual species. And there may have been varieties within certain populations to lean towards subspeciation. I don't know. I'm not a Megalodon expert. I like Megs. But was he insinuating it just got big because it was a subspecies? And was he trying to say it was a subspecies of great whites? And the claim that great whites get 22 feet. As far as I know, there's another YouTube channel called Shark Bites. Maybe I'll put that right here if I remember. He kind of analyzed that because just like there's different ways to measure crocs, there's different ways to measure sharks. You know, and so do you go mid-peduncle or do you bend the caudal fin down and go to the end of the caudal fin? But getting a great white over 20 feet, I don't think any of them have ever been actually measured bigger than 20 feet. But that depends if you're going to like the mid-peduncle point of the caudal fin or the actual tip of the caudal fin where you have to bend it down. I'm not a shark expert. It's been a while since I've taken any ichthyology courses, so I would have to re-look into that. But I don't think there's any really big great whites that hit 21 or 22 feet that have been academically proven, at least. But I don't know. Correct me. Put it in the comments below if I'm wrong. I want to know. But subspecies, there are different caimans, but was he insinuating that there's different subspecies caimans, which are true, depending on where you sit with the brown caiman. But there are 6 species of caimans. Let's see if I can do this from memory. We have Melanosuchus niger, which is the black caiman. We have Caiman forderostrum, which is the broad-snouted caiman. We had forderostrum. I'm mixing up species. Laterostris is the broad-snouted caiman. We get Caiman yacari, which is the yacari caiman. Caiman crocodilus, which is the common caiman or the spectacled caiman. Then we get Paleosuchus palpebrosus, which is the smallest, and that's the Cuvier dwarf caiman. Again, pronounced Cuviers, not Cuviers, because remember, Georges Cuvier, father of paleontology, French guy, Cuvier's dwarf caiman. Then we get Paleosuchus trigonatus, which is the slender-snouted, more wedged-headed dwarf caiman. And that's a good example to bring them up, because black caimans, the Melanosuchus niger, they can get up 16, 18 feet possibly. We're hitting saltwater crocodile sizes. Again, different ratios for you ratio nerds out there. And that's an example of niche partitioning. But dwarf caimans live in more shallow, faster moving waters, and they come out of the water at nighttime to feed on land. That way they can avoid other larger crocodilians. So I don't know if that's what he meant. Now I'm going to kind of take away, because I don't want to correct something, but I hope someone goes out there and teaches Joe Rogan the difference between species and subspecies. Because honestly, as a biologist or anybody, like a vertebrate zoologist, the word species is kind of difficult because you're going to have to define it and then use your definition and justify why you use that definition in your research project and why it was pertinent for that particular moment. Because defining a species is really challenging if you're like a clumper or a spreader. But anyway, the next portion was, do we exaggerate their sizes? Absolutely. Again, I get called out all the time to move snakes. I even bring my Burmese pythons and my reticulated pythons to live animal programs for schools, and we ask the audiences, how big is it? And almost everybody gets it wrong. And we get some wild guesses. Like one of my favorite Burmese pythons to bring up, her name's Snowflake. She's 12 feet long, and she's not giant. She's bigger than what most people are expecting, because most people are encountering little things, right? And when we ask people out, we get guesses all the way up to 30 feet for her. Some people are going 15, 20, 25 feet. Only experienced snake people will start guessing like 10 or 12 feet, and they'll sometimes underdo it to be safe. So yeah, so you get kind of that altering of people's opinions there when they don't want to be wrong, right? But yeah, we get huge exaggerations. I get calls to move rattlesnakes all the time, and people say, I have a 6-foot rattlesnake in my garage. And I show up as a 2.5-foot gopher snake. People suck at identifying animals, and people really suck at measuring things. So I just have a couple of questions, because how are people measuring these animals? If it's in the wild, do you have 2 points of reference? Do we have a way to photograph or identify how close it is? Is it bent between those 2 points of references? Because that bend can actually increase its length. Was it straight between 2 points of reference? Most commonly, people claim it was next to a boat. Again, my reference earlier in this video about the Malibu artist on the kayak with that great white next to his boat. He could not see it. It was the drone pilot that had to identify where it was for him to put the camera in the water. So if there is a croc near the boat, and maybe you see its head, maybe it surfaces a little bit, how much of the animal's body is surfaced? How much is it an emotional reaction? Did a log also poke up over there and you just assumed it was the edge of its tail? How do we know that you are not also kind of getting different light perspectives? Was there light gleaming off the water? How accurate is this? Did somebody have a bird's eye view? And if so, did they actually document, let's say there was a helicopter over someone's fishing boat while a 25-foot saltwater crocodile surfaced next to it? Show us. I'm just going to say show us. But if you told me that a croc surfaced next to you in your boat, I'm not going to believe any unit of measure you offer me, because you might be afraid, your adrenaline might be rushing, you might be a slightly hyperbolic personality. The fish was this big, right? We get people who, in where I live, who travel out of state for religious things. And they always come back to me going, well, I was in Brazil and I came across a 25-foot anaconda. That is really, really big. And they're like, well, it stretched across the road. Well, not all roads are the same. You got to show me a measurement of this road and show me the straight line of the snake to show exactly where it was, you know? So yeah, people really suck at trying to give accurate measurements. And it just becomes kind of a poop fest of trying to believe people, because yeah, you tell me you have a croc in the water next to your boat and you were able to measure it accurately. And let's say you have a 20-foot boat and it spanned 2 boat lengths. How do you know? Because now perspective changes. You know, my ability, if I'm at an angle and I see it from here to here, I'm not going to be able to accurately measure it, right? I would have to have a completely 90 degrees above it to actually get an equal spread of the animal. So yeah, people are way wrong, and people lie. There is actual financial reasons to lie. Let's say you want people to come do croc tours, which is a thing, especially in like Florida and North Australia and parts of Asia, and South America, and parts of South America too, where you can go out and see these things in the wild. That you claim you got a 25-footer on your tour, that's going to bring in some cash. Another really good example is Fragrant Flowers, the reticulated python. They claimed they had a 49-foot reticulated python. And it brought in tourists. And when scientists asked, can we get in there and measure her? All of a sudden it was no. And finally they measured her, and she was a big retic, but she was not close to a record-breaking size retic. Oh, and by the way, it's Robert Wadlow. Just from the top of my memory, I think he was 8'11". So good job, Joe, for hitting 9 feet, because you're 1 inch off. 8'11". And yes, Robert Wadlow was affected by gravity, but so are crocs. They move on land. Don't discredit that, because gravity does affect them too. Because remember, they have to be able to push themselves at the surface of the water to grab an animal. They don't always just wait for them to swim across, because you don't always get that luxury. So yeah, crocs are definitely affected by gravity too, and they have very clever adaptations, like muscles grabbing onto the osteoderms. Purosaurus had a very unique hip structure to help it counterbalance that weight. So yes, they are also affected by gravity, just like, not just like us, but they are still affected by it. So yeah, good comments. A little bit of the shifting of the goalpost. Thought that was funny. No, it's because he was born in 1790 versus 1890. It's always going to be moving. And pretty much those what-if statements just start to become, I don't want you to disprove me. How dare you bring up evidence like Henry, which is a good-looking croc, by the way. Let's get ready for the next. I think this is the last soundbite. We'll find out. Let's get the next one out, and then we'll be done.
But they drown. That's how crocodiles kill.
Because they get too big, right?
No, I'm saying.
Oh, how they kill people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like a crocodile like that would, if he couldn't drag you to water. Isn't that nuts that like their actual method is drowning?
Yeah. Well, they can hold their breath forever.
Right.
So just like, I know you can.
Right, because like their teeth are just meant for holding.
Yeah.
Their teeth aren't meant for chopping or anything.
I don't know why it bothers me so much when people overgeneralize how animals hunt. They have different strategies to different prey. Sometimes crocs do drown things, and I think Bob Gimlin was right by saying yes, they drown things. Have they drowned people? Sadly, yes. Do I like that? No. Is it the only way people have ever been dispatched by a crocodile? No. And so crocs have several different means of feeding. If they're eating turtles or fish, they're just going to crunch down and they're going to smash it. Turtles, they're just going to smash it while it's still alive and then swallow it whole. Larger prey, I've seen videos of it was like a juvenile, I was going to say subadult, but it was definitely like 5 foot. So it was a juvenile-ish Nile crocodile. And it was trying to capture some type of gazelle or impala or whatever, I can't remember. It's been a while. And it went down to the water, and it grabbed it by the nose, and it was losing its grip, because they have little grasping teeth right here. I'll show you. Little graspies. It just had the animal by the tip of the nose like this, and it was losing its grip. And it somehow started twisting the animal around, and it got its hoof stuck in its horns. And yes, because it's not a deer, they're horns, not antlers. And they have a bony core with that sheath cover that they do not shed. Antlers shed. I'm a nerd with ADHD. Whoops. Anyway, it got stuck, and it was still trying to anchor itself in with a little hoof there. And the croc did what we call inertial feeding. And essentially, they move the animal with their body weight into the side and start shaking like this. And it was able to break the neck of that animal, and it was dragged into the water. So inertial feeding now has another way. A lot of times, crocs will grab an animal, pull it up out of the water, and especially if it's already been killed, twist it to one side and fling it. And that's what we'll call inertial feeding. And essentially, the teeth actually make little puncture marks into their prey, and that acts as an area where they can kind of break and tear. So they use inertial feeding. One of the other ways of types of inertial feeding is the famous death roll. And there is a really sad video, it's actually on YouTube, of a zebra that was caught by 3 crocodiles. We have crocodile number 1, I think, grabbed it by the hips. Crocodile number 2 grabbed it by the side, and they were all small crocodiles. And zebras are tough. Zebras are tough and they're aggressive, and they could not bring this thing down. And if I remember right, it was anchoring itself against a rock, which means the crocs couldn't fling it around in the water. And finally, a big bull Nile came in, grabbed it by the head, death rolled, and broke the skull in half. So do they only feed by drowning? No. So yeah, that's like humans only eat Jell-O. That would be the worst overgeneralization, right? We don't do that. In fact, I have this little fox skull that someone lent me. It's not even mine. I have to give it out. They have different shaped teeth to do different jobs, right? So we don't want to overgeneralize foxes, and they can eat fruit, and they can eat meat. That's called heterodonty. You, my friends, are a heterodontied fish. The most good-looking derived fish I've ever seen in my life, if I do say so myself. But you are heterodonted. Different different dont tooth, right? And crocs kind of are too. So if you look right here, this broad-snouted caiman laterostris, the fun, grasping, super sharp teeth are right here. That's how they're going to grab onto their prey. And if you know about caiman laterostris, they're eating mollusks and turtles, right? But they will also eat other vertebrate prey and sometimes fish, which is vertebrate prey. Sorry. Grasping right here. Blunt for crushing right here. So if they catch a turtle, let's say they catch a turtle by the leg, they're going to hold it, They might try to disorient it. They might even death roll it if it's a really big turtle. That way it doesn't know how to fight back. It might be dizzy, it might be confused, it might be in shock. And then once that they are able to manage the animal fighting back less, they pull it to the back of the mouth and then crush down with these more blunt teeth. So they are semi-heterodonted, which means they're kind of all the same basic shape, but they're kind of not. In fact, some of these start to mushroom in shape as well. Better for crushing. And on Deinosuchus, you actually see more chips in the teeth back here where they are crushing down. And we do have evidence that they ate turtle prey. So, and dinosaur. We do have bite marks on dinosaurs as well from Deinosuchus. So, do we always have the same feeding style for the exact same animal? No. And they have their preferences too. Different people have preferences of how to eat their pasta. And if there's any Italians listening, I am so sorry. I know I cook and eat pasta the wrong way. Please don't judge me. We're all different. So yeah, don't overgeneralize how animals feed. I really, and there was some, I really want to thank you guys for going on these 2 interviews with me. Overall, fairly hyperbolic. 50 feet, 60-foot super crocs. Like, no. I no. We already went over the size. I don't need to bring that in. So there was a lot of exaggerations, but they had a couple good points in there. I really like them bringing up Henry as a size reference for age. I'll go ahead and post a picture of a crocodile that's losing his teeth with age too. If you guys don't want to fall for stuff like this again, when you have 2 people who are talking outside their area, which they're allowed, right? They're allowed to talk about stuff that's interesting to them. But if you don't know if what they're saying is true or false and you want to get into Crocs, there's 2 books I'm going to recommend. And this is a shameful plug because one of them's mine. And I will be updating it, by the way. There's a couple things I need to fix. But overall, it's still really good. First one is by Jake Miller, and it's What We Get Wrong About Crocodilians. He just released the 2nd edition. I have yet to read it. I'm so sorry, Jake. I've been super busy. But go ahead on Amazon. Go look up What We Get Wrong About Crocodilians by Jake Miller. And it is like he takes the most common misunderstood myths about crocodilians and he says, be done with them. He goes over ratios, actually, very similarly to I do. I think I'm more aggressive about not judging animals based off ratios than he is, but he does a really good job with all the modern stuff. He goes over myths like alligators in sewers. Just a lot of really cool stuff about them regrowing their tails. This actually came off of a live caiman that got her tail injured by another caiman, and I just kept a souvenir. So there's a lot of stuff that Jake goes over in his book that's definitely worth your while, and it's super fun. It's a fast read. I think it's less than 60 pages. In 60 pages, you can get caught up on some pretty fun information. He's got good images, and he knows what he's talking about. So I recommend going to check out the What We Get Wrong About Crocodilians by any means, and that would get you started. And then there's my book. It's called Mega Crocs by Jason Dunn. It's also on Amazon. Again, I'll be updating a couple like finite things, but if you don't have your degree in this stuff, it's not going to matter to you, to be honest. I'm also writing a 2nd book that'll be coming out hopefully this spring. My kids have challenged me to write a story instead of something technical, so I've been researching how to write a good story, and I think I've got it nailed down. I will let you guys know when that comes out, because that'll be really fun. Easy read, because I'm a beginner to the storytelling realm, but we're going to try it. It's about Crocs. Lazarus taxon, kind of a teaser if you guys like that kind of stuff. But check out my book because it goes over why paleontologists can't rely on the 1-to-9 ratio, issues with other ratios. We go over size, who they are, where they're from, how big or how small maybe they were, maybe how strong their bites were, their diets, when they lived, what they looked like. So there's a lot of stuff, and my book Mega Crocs hammers down a lot of prehistoric crocs while using modern analogs. And in fact, this skull right here is actually in the book. And actually, I took pictures of these 2 models from Rebor London. Definitely recommend buying those, by the way. Go support Rebor London. But yeah, that caiman skull's in the book. And I use a lot of modern analogs on trying to decipher the hidden clues of Deinosuchus, Sarcosuchus, and Perusaurus. So go check out my book. New book coming out. I have hopefully some really fun videos coming out for you guys. If you like zoology, paleontology, biology, keep following this channel. I do like to address certain things. I even sometimes address stuff that's outside of my realm of expertise. But just kind of like judging people in their scientific approach. So if you want to see more of that, let me know. I really appreciate you guys for joining me on this Joe Rogan Experience review. Keep following for more. We'll have a blast together. And guys, remember, all Crocs are Mega Crocs in their own right. Thanks so much, guys, and have a wonderful day.